One of the greatest bullets of modern culture is to be judgmental. Judgmental towards all those areas from where we actually learn, those that we sometimes revere, and even more so towards nature. This is what is reflected in our tendency to call any natural event by a name that is reflective of our judgmental psyche, and that is towards nature. This is the reason that we call monsoons as uncertain, we call it as unpredictable. This is something that we regularly and unmindful of the fact that we are doing it, and the fact that monsoons are one of the most beautiful phenomena in nature is still they are judged as being unpredictable and uncertain. Rather than to accept the beauty of its variations and a splendid phenomena that accompanies it as its characteristic and its character, we assign names that suits our mood and convenience of economy and society. Just think of it. Humans came much later than monsoons in India, and since then they have been dependent on monsoons. Should the inhabitants of India have the right to call the characteristics of monsoons with a judgmental name? Indeed, it is these characteristics of monsoon that have allowed the humans to exist. They have allowed the humans to flourish and allowed them to grow. This aspect is now getting lesser and lesser amount of appreciation. Giving names, coining names, assigning perceptions, towing an unidimensional line all becomes judgmental. So, a natural event, a beautiful event like that of breaking of the monsoon becomes a hazard, it becomes a disaster. Spectacles of nature like rains accompanied by thunder and lightning becomes dangerous. Is it nature's fault that it sheds its beauty? Abundant its characteristic that made many poets and also formed the basis of many scientific researches. Indeed, we are witnessing some tumultuous events in our atmosphere, weather and climate whose answers are not exactly known to us. It has been our choice that our pursuit of explanations have got confined to certain perceptions and mono perspectives. Climatic change is one such event that has been linked to what not, be it drought, be it flood, be it cyclones, be it Arctic blasts, all of these events, these phenomena, are now given different names that villainizes them. In this pursuit, we are getting to become too judgmental, or are we being too wise? In climatic change, its causes, impacts, and solutions we reflect our judged psyche and non-justifiable nature. Is climatic change a natural event, natural phenomena, or is it not that we have made it a declared disaster? Whenever we transcend the limit of thinking ourselves as being too logical, too intelligent, too wise, we do become judgmental, particularly towards nature, and therefore we do not do justice to nature and natural phenomena. This indeed affects humanity as we do not understand our limitations, our strengths, our adaptations, our problems, and solutions as well. Even if we seek solutions, they become complex, and we lose our sense of lateral thinking to such an extent that the solution, even if it is near, solution, if it is good, even if it is simple and nearby, we postmortem the entire universe to seek justice and its mechanism to show that we are actually victims in this case. Even when we start seeking justice, our justice is in a legal framework rather than on natural grounds and natural justice. And this becomes the source of all systems of wrong conclusions. In this process, we always forget justice is not in law. Justice is all about how we treat each other and how we treat our environment. Was it not the same monsoons and its characteristics which have allowed the humans to exist, to flourish, and to grow? And is it not the same monsoon that is seen by the same people as a menace and who try to give a name like uncertain, unpredictable to the monsoons? Do we do justice to the monsoons by giving the names such as uncertain and unpredictable? Let's accept it. Most of our problems are not related to not being able to do justice to our ability to gain knowledge of nature and its myriad manifestations. Climatic change and the response of the world is one such event and phenomena. Seen from that angle, climatic change has been made a boogie by the IPCC. But if climatic change is seen through a scientific lens of another and a more scientific organization such as the World Meteorological Organization, then it is different from a IPCC. There are always going to be some fluctuations and trends of which there are evidences of such type of variations and fluctuations. There are variations and trends only. When these fluctuations follow a particular trend, it is called as a climatic trend. These fluctuations may itself be cyclic in nature, and it is going to be given the name called as climatic cycle. Over a long period of time, climatic fluctuations may be such that a shift in type of a climate prevailing over a given area takes place. This change in climate is called climatic change. Then, is it that everything that we are going to be talking about is climatic change? The answer is what you know. Indeed, climate looks like it's shifting, and one can prove it quantitatively. And if we are intent to prove it, and what is one thing in this world that we can't go on to prove it, wrong or right? And who knows it better than the legal luminaries in the world? We can also go on to prove that God is wrong. God was wrong. We can find all the faults with deities like that of Lord Ram, and we cannot even leave Mahatma Gandhi and his intentions. But to what extent is it that the name, the concern and the response associated with climatic change is justifiable and can be dealt within the purview of logical as well as a legal framework? Now take a meteorological perspective. The climate has in no period of geological time remained static. It has shown the types of changes unimaginable by today's standards. The whole of Carboniferous was hot and humid, during which coal formation took place. During Cretaceous, CO2 content in the atmosphere was very high, as much as 20%. And during Permian, the Earth experienced ice age. Think, the Pleistocene ice age that began 2 million years ago did not finish until 10,000 years ago. Throughout that time, the world's climate varied widely. At times, much of the northern hemisphere was covered with ice caps and glaciers. Then, a few thousand years later, the climate was warmer than they are now. A few thousand years later, there still will be a glacier that will be southward once again. Every 4 to 7 years, the Earth's temperature sees a fluctuation caused by variation in the energy output of the sun itself because of an increase in the sunspot activity. Old astronomical records show that the sun does indeed change in size and energy output from time to time, and these changes do alter the climate. All of those who see through a blinkered vision ascribe it to global warming induced by something else. That was a meteorological perspective. Take a historical perspective. Even in historical times, climate has not remained the same. When Kedarnath temple in Uttarakhand was built, the place was known for rice cultivation, and it now shows it in the form of paleo channels, that is, the river channels of the past. Then in the Mughal period, it got covered with a thick layer of ice that almost covered it up to 18 meters high, and that is evidenced by striation marks in the temple. The Indus Valley civilization used to be experiencing a wet monsoon climate till the monsoon shifted itself out of its location towards the Gangetic Valley. Rajasthan used to receive a very high amount of rainfall and had extensive forests in Ranthambore till it started becoming warmer and drier. The Sahara has been a site of water body which dried up much more early than it was, and it was very thinly populated. Was it climate change, or it was always a natural event? You can imagine on the Tasli plateau in the middle of Sahara desert, there are old rock paintings which show grassland animals. They must have been painted when the local climate was much more moister than it is right now. Trees still grow nearby. They have immensely long roots which extract water from the deep rocks. These trees could not have started growing unless there was water on the surface. Europe suffered a little ice age between 13th and 14th centuries when climate was very much colder than what it is now. In winters, fairs were regularly held on the frozen river Thames, which will be impossible nowadays because it does not get that cold enough. The polar regions show sign of a warm climate in as far a place like that of Svalbard and shows intermittent spurts of cold wave conditions. More recent changes are due to shorter-term events. Volcanic eruptions can throw up dust and gas such as sulfur dioxide high up into the atmosphere. There, they can go on to block out the sunlight and lower the temperature on the Earth's surface. A noticeable cooling in the 1960s coincided with increasing volcanic activity across the globe. Pinatubo in Philippines and Iafazakul in Iceland had similar effects. Venice used to get flooded and is flooded now as well. Australia experienced bushfires and experiences it now as well. This has happened before and will keep on happening. And this happened despite there were no signs of global warming. Now take a geopolitical perspective. Geopolitical perspectives are clearly a case of perception management to mold the public opinion and create new markets as well, where an opinion will be made and propagated the way it suits the maker. If the bogey of a global warming is not raised, then consider these aspects. We all have been hearing about climatic changes and ozone hole since 1984 and we are made to understand that we'll have an ozone hole that will cover the whole of Australia in 20 years of time. And that 30 years have already passed. Of course, making people insecure about ozone hole because of CFCs will make people look for different alternatives for CFCs, and then the new CFC will be a new market, and a new market will be a new source of revenue. Despite all the issues that surround fossil fuel uses and its abundant competition from solar energy and renewable energy lobby, it becomes understandable that the debate of fossil fuels versus solar and other renewables is not simple. Whoever wins this debate enjoys the market. Third is, if people are made to understand that climatic changes are taking place, then only they can be made to understand that they will have to buy new products, new technologies. Of course, they are energy saving and must be so. The so-called climatic change will invite a lot of African countries to fall in line with the Western world policies of incorporating them within the ambit of new economic policies and converting them into a new form of a neo-colonial thinking. The so-called climatic change is likely to give Russia also some major advantages, such as the Siberian permafrost will melt and the land will become useful for cultivation, albeit maybe a small section of land. Most of the regions having a harsh climatic conditions in Siberia will become somewhat congenial to human habitation. The Arctic region will get opened for both oil exploration as well as for sea lane traffic. Islands like Spitsbergen will become habitable. That is geopolitical perspective. Take an ethical perspective. Remember, Dhanushkodi type of event that took place in 1964. Had it taken place today, it would have been invariably been linked to climatic change. The strongest tropical cyclone was also in 1964. The most powerful Arctic blasts were not only in 2015 but also before. One of the coldest seasons in the plains was in 1962 when the birds kept dropping from their nest in the plains and when global warming was unheard of. The highest temperature recorded in Delhi was in 1962 when Delhi was not a concrete jungle and machine jungle with millions of sources to raise temperature as they are now able to raise it. Tell us, at which point of time in the history of Earth the climate was not changing? At which point of time in history of human beings the climate was not changing? It will take only one volcanic activity to release 10 times more CO2 than what we have done so far in the last 100 years or so. It will take only one jet stream oscillation to change many things related to rains, intense rains and drought. You must understand that climatic change is natural. It is the nature of the climate to change, since the only constant in nature is change. Change is what makes nature as beautiful. Change is beauty. It is this beauty that is to admire. Had the weather conditions been uniform throughout, neither would have been variations, nor would have been beauty of variations, nor would have been different moods, nor would have been different innovations, nor would have been different poetries, nor would have been different art forms also. We are bringing some undesirable changes, and this is definitely concerning, and needless to say, will definitely impact us. Our thinking and our response to different events and phenomena reflect our concept perpetuating this management. When we try to control floods by shifting floods through construction of embankments, we think we have controlled it. This is foolishness. If we think that we are doing everything correct by using solar energy to solve our sustainable energy needs, remember, where will we shift the dangerous structures after some time? And when, even and when, if we're going to bring helium-3 from moon to generate fusion energy, won't will we raise the temperature of the earth? Shifting forms of energy do not prevent heat buildup. Laws of thermodynamics prove it. How can we guard which laws, which will go to guard us, and which conventions will go to protect us when we build settlements on Kosi river bed and complain of that floods affect us? Which law will guard us when we grow rice in desert and complain that water is getting scarce? Which law will guard us when we sit on the top of a volcano and say it's warm beneath? It's our folly that we deforest, we burn stubble. It's our folly that we increase population, we use chemicals. And when we knowingly cause destruction and degradation, we do not call that climate changing, we call it as climatic degradation. We are causing weather aberrations and it is condemnable, and have to get into practice of a sustainable practices as early as possible. We understand if you don't have to take action now, if you don't take it now, weather will change. We also understand we have to take action. If we do not take action, do nothing, climate will still change. And if we go to do everything, climate will still change. We are ironically the products of all that climatic changes. Had climate not changed, reptiles would have ruled the whole of the earth. Had climate not changed, there would be no coal. Had climate not changed, mammoths would have ruled the world. Had climate not changed, we would not be seeing its beauty. Is it not that we are being very selfish in raising the boogie of climatic change? We are a product of such change, and this climatic change will pave a way for other ecosystems to evolve, other creatures to come and inhabit the earth. Let's accept it. We do not know nature and its ways. And how does it function? Today we seem that we happen to know that. Tomorrow there will be something new in the climate that we will not go on to know, and we will not be certainly knowing it. It is not ethical to link every event in the atmosphere to global warming. Following this hype on climatic change amounts to an intellectual enslavement. Imagine Einstein, whom we followed wrongly on what he said of ether, and we followed it for decades that the entire space is filled of ether. Imagine Stephen Hawking, whom we followed for decades to be proven wrong now. Imagine how the West had proven itself wrong on our Namaste, Yoga, Ayurveda, Indian diet, and ghee as well. Agree, we may not be wrong this time. May be wrong this time as well, and we may not be wrong as well. But such intellectual colonization of our mindset gets reflected in drawing wrong conclusions. Our inability to control our logic amounts to our unwillingness to find simple solutions. And our solutions are simple everywhere. To tackle CO2, we just have to allow rains to take place. It will dissolve CO2 and convert into H2SO3, that is a carbonic acid in soil, or to make calcium carbonate. We just need to allow nature to work. Isn't that we have inadvertently did it during the COVID lockdown? Our problems lie in not being ethical, and we do not need laws to be ethical. To be ethical, we do not need laws. Being ethical first begins with understanding whether we are truthful or we are blindly towing a line. Being ethical means shunning all our self-interest, respecting our environmental surrounding, and that is what civilization is. That is what justice is as well. Can we enact laws for being environmentally ethical, being moral? Morality is something that is never judged, it's only felt. We do not need laws where we require only to be ethical. We can have millions of legal framework to control us from change and protect us from change. We can have thousands of laws, legal aspects, but in order to live, in order to be sustainable, we need to follow environmental laws and not that are man-made. And there are environmental laws. One of these laws is that everything is connected to everything else. That is nature. The second law is that nature will always correct itself, it veers itself from its course, following cybernetics principle. Is it not that this is what exactly is visible during the COVID lockdown, when people are able to see nature in its best form after a gap of something like some 20 years of a time? The third law is everything must go somewhere. Fourth is there is no such thing as free lunch from the environment. The fifth is up to a size, the bigger the better. Beyond that size, the bigger the worst. And the sixth is nature knows best. We just need to follow nature, be with it, deposit ourselves to it. Only then we can enjoy it, live in it, and only then we can go on to thrive on this planet. This planet is ours, and the best way we can go to conserve it is by appreciating nature, its changes, its vagaries, its fluctuations, and everything associated with its beauty.